Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, around the world, wherever you are, we're here and we're talking about how to grow business around the world. It's a new series at Global Chamber. This is the second program that we've had looking at 5 metropolitan areas, important ones around the world, and really talking about what some of the business opportunities are, and also for the executive perhaps that may not have been there or maybe only rarely been there, what are some of the cultural things that we need to be aware of, before, during, and after the trip to cities. I'm sure you are like me, where you enter a new city, you've got a specific business plan in mind. You may not have been there very often, and suddenly you're kind of thrown into situations, and why not be prepared? So our intent at Global Chamber is over the next year to have every 2 weeks a program with 5 more cities. And if you're doing the math like we have thought a little bit about, that's over 100, about 130 cities over the next year that we will have a database on and be able to, for you to have access to experts like we have here today. So we've assembled 5 experts in these 5 cities for this program today. And I'm just really pleased to have each one of these folks be available to give you a brief snapshot of what's going on and what opportunities to think about in cultural things, but also to be a resource, hopefully, for you in your next visit. And hopefully you'll consider doing maybe some business with these people, because these are really talented folks. The first one I'd like to introduce to you is Jeff Daar of Daar and Newman. He's also the Global Chamber Advisory Board Chair for the Los Angeles chapter. He is so well connected in LA. You couldn't find a better connected person in Los Angeles, has been doing business in LA, but he also does business in dozens of countries around the world every day, virtually. And he also does a lot of traveling when he's allowed to. He just came back from Mexico, mostly not business, I would imagine, but he is a global traveler, global knowledgeable, global tribe person. And Jeff is going to kick us off today with about a 5 or 6 minute conversation. So clearly not enough to cover all of the things going on in Los Angeles. However, we are going to have a Q&A session, and Jeff is always around. He's an extraordinary resource. And Jeff, thank you for sharing your time and expertise today. Would you like to get us kicked off with Los Angeles?
Happy to, Doug, and hello, everybody. So Jeff Daar in Los Angeles. I'm a lawyer. In addition to just doing complex business disputes in California, as Doug mentioned, I work closely with people in about 30 plus countries. And I'm a small firm, but I'd like to think have lots of expertise in how to make international cross-border business work as intended and to avoid disputes. And then if you have a dispute, how to control, manage it. So I have the easy task. I'm in Los Angeles. Los Angeles sells itself. Los Angeles is worldwide images, Hollywood, beautiful. You see shadows because of the light outside. I'm coming in from outside of my office window right now. So let me tell you about Los Angeles. We are one of the most diverse cosmopolitan cities in the world, which is really an exciting place to be. And frankly, the numbers, which I'm going to share real quick with everyone, tell the story of why this all is. Los Angeles is the western capital of the United States. With all due respect to everybody, it's the eastern capital of the Pacific Rim. It's the northern capital of Latin America. But this is why we're the #1 global city for investment for the last 4 years. We're the 3rd largest metropolitan economy in the world with $1 trillion in economic output, $1 trillion. We're the most populous and productive city in California, which is the 5th largest economy in the world. Compared with countries, the Los Angeles metropolitan area is the 17th largest economy in the world with a GDP of $1.08 trillion, which is comparable to Indonesia, which has a GDP of $1.12 trillion. Like I said, Los Angeles sort of sells itself. I have a lot more to share. We're growing faster than any other large US city. That's a Bloomberg 2019. LA County is bigger than 45 states in the United States. The county contributes more to the US economy than any other county in the United States. A little bit about our people and culture. The the people in Los Angeles, which is really what makes the city a vibrant place. And our sectors are more diverse than anywhere else in the world, seriously. And that sparks collisions and collaborations that no other ecosystem can allow. I'm sorry to have my other competing cities here, but I think it's fair to say these things. We have over 224 languages that are spoken in Los Angeles, and 180 languages that are specific with publications that are distributed and published in the city. And this is a city where you can see the faces of the world on our streets and the face of Los Angeles in the world. Nearly 60% of people in the city of Los Angeles speak a language other than English. We're a city where 22% of the average in the United States speak another language, and California is 44, and we're 60 in LA alone. In 2019, almost 37% of Angelenos were foreign born. We're not a place with a lot of old school anything. You come here in 5 minutes, you fit in because we welcome everybody, and huge numbers of people here are new. So we don't have the traditions and culture of a lot of places where, you know, you come, it takes a long time to break in. We're sort of the opposite. We welcome new, vibrant people. And it's shown by the fact that, you know, 37% are foreign born, almost 3 times the US average of 13%. It's higher than the California average. When it comes to consular corps in the United States, we have the 2nd largest group. We're the 3rd largest in the world, with consuls and honorary consuls from over 100 countries. In 2017, the LA region had 8 of the world's largest foreign-born populations outside of their home countries, meaning we had, other than the home country, the 2nd most population groups in the LA area, and that would include Mexico, not officially confirmed, but pretty much given, the Philippines, El Salvador, Vietnam, Korea, Guatemala, Iran, Israel, Belize, Taiwan, Japan, Thailand. I mean, this is a diverse cosmopolitan place. We were named the best sports city. Talk about other things. We're the only city actually in the United States to hold what's called a super sport equinox. What that means is we have every major league team in a city playing at least 1 game on the same day in this city. If you love sports, LA is a happening place with more and more activities happening, including the Olympics. We'll have our share of the FIFA coming up, more and more to go. We have more museums and theaters than any other US city. We have a very thriving music and gallery scene. If you're into music, you can literally lose half the things you'd want to see because there's just so many things playing on one given night, even with the COVID pandemic still occurring. And separate from culture, we have a perfect climate most of the year. Our standard of living is high, and the commutes may be challenging, but you know, the quality of life here is still amazing. A couple other quick things when it comes to talent available. We're the #1 manufacturing center in the United States with over 320,000 workers in 2018, more than any other county in the United States. We're the 6th largest startup ecosystem in the world. This is on a 2020 report. We're deemed in 2020 to be the 6th easiest place to do business in the world. And when it comes to quality of life, if people come here from overseas and want to set up, you know, a subsidiary of business and have the people here and have you know, expats here, well, we have over 188 universities, colleges, and professional schools in LA County. We have 4 in the county of the top 50 colleges and universities, the most in the United States outside of, or tying actually with Boston. And as you can see, I'm quite enthusiastic. And then the 2 last things to talk about, the ports and the airport. On the ports, you've seen probably at different times a little about the ports here, but we're the gateway to Asia and Latin America. Our 2 primary seaports are ground zero for energy efficient logistics at the moment. And energy efficient is a very serious, real thing. We're trailblazing leaders, setting the most progressive agenda in the nation. I would like to think, and I'm proud to say is really true. The Port of LA is the #1 container port in the Western Hemisphere. It's 17th in the world. The San Pedro Bayport Complex, which is part of the LA and Long Beach ports, is the 9th busiest port complex in the world. And when it comes to the airport, LAX, which is our international airport, and we have other satellite airports in the region, but LAX is the 3rd busiest airport in the world. second busiest in the United States in 2019. In 2019, LAX served more than 88 million passengers. Atlanta will beat us, but that's okay. But we have more people who actually come and stay in Los Angeles versus just using us as a transitory hub. And then I will mention in 2019, we offered an average of 700 daily nonstop flights, 700 to 113 destinations in the US, and more than 1,200 nonstop flights to 91 markets in 46 countries on 72 different commercial airlines. That makes us also a hub for international business. And we're currently, I'm very, really proud because I was a part of all this, we're undergoing a $14.3 billion capital improvement project to make LAX into truly a world-class international airport. And that's ongoing as we talk. So coming very, very shortly, we will finally be an airport that'll be a pleasure to travel in and out of. We haven't been in the past, but we're doing something about it. And if you visit LAX right now, it's a little crazy because it's sort of like doing open heart surgery on someone while they're running a marathon. But that's what we're doing, and it'll soon be completed. And we'll talk later about foreign direct investment because foreign direct investment reflects what I just mentioned. So.
What an amazing way to kick this off. I mean, there's so much data there. My head is spinning, and I sure have a much more global view of LA than I did before you started. So thank you for sharing that and kicking us off so strongly. I think that's going to be tough to compete with. So I'm afraid to pick somebody next because it is tough to compete with. And so rather than do that, let's just start kind of randomly. I wonder if we could go next to Todd Cornell. Todd Cornell runs his own company. He's the founder of Culture 668. He's lived over 20 years in China, and one of the last places he lived over 5 years was Harbin in northern, and he emphasized that it's definitely cool and cold in Harbin, but there's a lot going on, a lot of manufacturing. We're going to hear more about that. There's a furniture industry that's hubbed there. Todd Cornell is the Global Chamber Northern Colorado executive director and has a love and an appreciation and lots of work and activity going on with China. And so, Todd, could you take us to Harbin and let us know more?
I can, Doug. And so I'd like to have everybody put on your warmest clothes. Be sure you take gloves and put on your snow boots. So we're leaving LA, that place where everybody's running around doing a marathon, and then there was something else happening to it at the same time. So we're going to Harbin, China. It's going to be a lot quieter, and it's going to be a lot more, what can I say? It's a lot more close to Siberia, let's just put it that way. So I lived in Harbin for 5 years. I worked for actually a California-based, Anaheim-based furniture manufacturer, and I was running their furniture manufacturing office in Harbin. And so there was a lot of interaction with furniture factories and getting things taken care of. So speaking about shipping and all of those things, getting the different products out was never a problem. We had everything taken care of. Dealing a lot with the local culture sometimes can be a little bit difficult. Obviously, I speak fluent Mandarin, so that made things a lot easier. Sometimes it gets cold. And so when it gets cold, you just kind of have to put up with it. It has an interesting summer in Harbin, in that part of the country, which is called Heilongjiang province. And that it sort of is nestled up just a little bit above North Korea right there, and then into Russia and Siberia. So it's very close to Vladivostok. And actually Harbin at one point in time was Russian. And then at a point, I believe it was in 1945 or something, there was a point where Russia ceded it to the Chinese. And so that gives a lot of a Russian feel to the city. There is a definite Russian influence. There are a lot of Russians there. It was really interesting when I first got there, all the Chinese asking me if I was Russian, and I'm like, no, I'm not Russian. But it was really unusual for them to see an American because they were so used to seeing Russians. there are like Russian Orthodox churches and all sorts of things. And there was actually, I think, one of the largest Jewish populations in all of China at one point that lived in Harbin. So it has a very interesting history. It also has for things to maybe rival Los Angeles, it has the ice festival. And that's a pretty amazing experience. And I went one year and I didn't take gloves. I thought, oh, I'm tough. I come from Colorado. I can handle a little bit of cold. Well, I was really regretful that I didn't bring any gloves with me. It was so cold. But it's an amazing experience walking through all of these buildings that are made out of snow or made out of ice that are actually the size of a real building. So doing business in Russia, I mean, in Harbin is a little bit challenging in that it is so removed from the rest of China. That does create some challenges in getting from one place to the other. Although Harbin is very close to Beijing, airport works just fine. It's not LAX, but it works really well. And also, like I said, the transportation, getting things in and out, no problems. A lot of wood. Harbin is very close to the Songling Mountains, and that's where a lot of wood comes from. And so IKEA was also doing a lot of their furniture manufacturing in Harbin. So it's a place for light industry. It's a good place for small industry, and obviously lumber and things like that. I know that there's a lot of challenges here for lumber right now in the US. I'm not really sure how things are going in China, but I enjoyed living in Harbin. It was interesting when I first got there. It was in the summer, and it was the first day I was there, and I woke up, bright sun, and just thought, oh, it's time to get going. And it just was weird because nobody's out on the street. And then I came to find out it was like 4 a.m. So that whole shift of the sun and everything, you're so far up north that you actually have really short winter days and very long summer days. So that's a basic introduction.
Because of the Russian influence, is there a lot of vodka drinking, you know, kind of on the business side of things? Are there certain things we should be aware of regarding those kinds of things?
Not necessarily vodka drinking so much. I mean, there is more drinking up there, but that has to do with the cold weather. I think that's just an aspect of it. But they just drink the baijiu like the rest of China.
Okay, got it. Thank you very much. Great introduction. Had no idea even how to pronounce it. So thank you for correcting my pronunciation, and really great introduction to Harbin. Thank you. As long as we're there in kind of the colder climes, why don't we go to Leo to talk about Moscow? That's definitely a place where vodka is involved. Leo, thank you for joining us today. Leo's been involved with business between Russia and parts of the world, in particular, other colder climes like Chicago, where he spends most of his days. Leo is part of our Global Chamber Chicago Advisory Board and still continues to do work in Russia, has family there and business in Moscow. And I remember listening to one of the advisory board meetings recently, and he was talking very fondly of doing business in Russia. So I couldn't think of a better person to give us an introduction. Leo, thank you for joining us today. Please introduce yourself further and let us know more about doing business in Moscow.
Doug, thank you for welcoming me. It's a pleasure to be here. And thanks for giving the opportunity to speak a little bit about Russia and its evil ways. Yes, we are pretty close to China. And I'm pretty sure that we feel each other's cold temperatures. So a couple of fun facts about Russia and its people, and probably some you know, some you don't, and some you'll be surprised to learn about. But Russia is the largest country in the world and actually bigger than the planet Pluto. There are over 100 languages in Russia. Russia also has the biggest nuclear arsenal in the world. Russian scientists have actually, or are considered to be probably one of the brightest, brightest scientists in their respective categories in the world. And in addition to, I would say, besides Israel and US, Russia is up there in terms of technology as well. In fact, in terms of what the capabilities of Russian scientists are, they were the first to actually bring back to life a plant that became extinct 32,000 years ago. So there's definitely a lot of brain power in Russia. Russians are the world's fourth largest or biggest lovers of alcohol, knocking a whopping 15.1 liters per person a year. That brings me to another fun fact that Russian women live 12 years longer than Russian men. I wonder why. In terms of the economy and the business opportunities, there are actually more billionaires living in Moscow than any other city in the world other than New York. Most of the revenue in Russia comes from oil production and its natural resources, and make up more than half of the federal budget revenue. And another fun fact is that Russia and US are just about 4 kilometers apart at the nearest point. So they're very, very, very close, and not as far as some people think we are. And then getting back to the doing business in Russia, it's a very interesting country in the sense where it has a lot of unknown factors to Western business people. But at the same time, it presents a lot of opportunities for companies to break in a market that's probably, I would say, top 5 in the world for opportunities. So the purchasing power is definitely tremendous in Russia, and more than ever in the last 10 years, the lower class has caught up to the middle class. So they're actually where I guess the population percentage for the middle class has grown tremendously. And this brings an opportunity for various types of products and categories to enter the market. And Russians are always after the latest and the greatest in terms of trends and technology-driven products. And Apple is by far the most popular brand in Russia. So there are opportunities for other B brands to come into Russia for electronics, which is also a very, very interesting market, because a lot of big time tech players are actually headquartered in Russia. So to wrap things up, I would say that Russia is a challenging market. However, it presents a lot of opportunities. The economy is definitely not broken. I would say, don't read the news too much. I can tell you from my experience that it's booming, and a lot of businesses, if they're not there yet, should definitely go in with the mentality that there is a way to make money in Russia. Thanks, Doug.
Interesting, because that's what I see and feel as well in terms of the opportunities. Where do you, could you maybe explain a little bit about what you do every day, and then also where do you see some of the opportunities for investors and exporters and others?
Well, my background is I've been in international sales for, I would say, almost 30 years. I've lived in Russia for 8 years, traveling back and forth to Chicago. And my specialty is helping companies on a consulting level to set up their infrastructure in Russia and neighboring countries in Eastern Europe. So companies that I usually work with are more on the electronics and technology side. So because consumer electronics, and especially the last 2 years because of the COVID, consumer electronics and at-home electronics have really taken off for obvious reasons. And it presents a lot of opportunities for companies that have not sold into the marketplace to present their latest and greatest to the people of Russia now. And there are definitely there's hunger for US-based products, for Western-based products. Russia is still somewhat behind in terms of getting everything as far as supply goes that is currently available to their Western counterparts. So that's why there is that hunger from the consumers to get these products into the market. That's why I strongly recommend, if you're an electronics manufacturer If you're a business doing sales in the consumer market, that is definitely the place to get into.
Okay, great insights. Via Prozument, thank you for your
Thanks,
time.
Todd. Thank you, everyone.
We're going to have Q&A at the end, so please either store up your questions to ask or put them in the chat area and we'll address them before the end of the hour. We are going to finish up at the top of the hour, so we're just about halfway through. And so I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. I also want to give a shout out to Chris Bennett, who is apparently watching this program with a group of MBA students. So thank you all for joining. You came to the right place to learn about these 5 cities, and these are all 5 talented global tribers, as we call them here at Global Chamber, people who are well-versed not only in the business, but in the culture and the success of doing business in each one of these locations. Atlanta, Georgia may not seem like a foreign place, and it really kind of isn't for Americans anyway, but it is very international. And Dana Austin is our next speaker. Dana is an international leader. She is an author, and she's actually been spending a lot of time in other countries recently, and in particular in the Caribbean, because she's setting up an event that is for book authors. If you want to write a book, you should be talking to Dana. She is a person who not only writes books, but she's also someone who can help you write a book. And so Dana Austin, thank you so much for joining us today. One thing that Atlanta does have that Los Angeles doesn't have is a World Series championship this year.
You know, thank you for kicking it off with that, Doug. I appreciate that. And good evening and good morning, everyone. Yes, we do hold the title for the World Series championship for this year. So while Los Angeles may have more sports offered, I would say we are the winning team, but every city has something to offer. Okay, so I'm gonna mine is gonna be more with slides because it just kind of keeps me on point so that I don't go over time and then I'm certain to cover the topics. So here we go. Are you all able to see the slides?
Yep, we can see it. And is that a pumpkin in the corner there? Is that what that is?
Oh, it's a peach.
Okay.
We are the peach state. Georgia is the peach state, and we are known for so many other things. But I think the one thing that holds us near and dear to people that come here is that we are a city of unmatched Southern hospitality. You will feel welcome here wherever you go. And so bringing your business here, connecting and doing business in Atlanta, it makes sense because we are the hub for one of the world's largest airlines, Delta Airlines. Cost of living when compared to other cities, particularly like larger cities, New York and LA, cost of living, quality of living is proven to be much better. And we do have a diverse talent pool. And I think if you live in any metropolis, you're going to see that diversity is one of the attractions. We have a huge tech hub, and we made the country's best place to start a new business. So our mayor, Keisha Lance Bottom, who is the 60th mayor of Atlanta, she has made many strides and accomplishments in the last 4 years of her term. She's created the city's first Department of Transportation. And when we think about doing business, which is the city that has the largest hub for airlines, Delta, creating a department for transportation is huge. And I think you would agree with me on that. She's done so many things, but I just enumerated a few. She's established the city's first fully staffed Office of Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion. I know that where anyone travels, business or pleasure, they want to know that there is diversity, that there is inclusion. And it's particularly for businesses that are coming here. And we also host the largest, the state of Georgia actually, the largest production for films in terms of generating revenue. We hosted the Super Bowl 53 and supported a 30% pay raise for her police officers. And also in Atlanta downtown, right near the State Farm Arena and the Mercedes-Benz Stadium, there's an area called the Gulch. It's 40 acres and it's being developed. So business is booming. We are primed to continue on this pathway. I'm only listing a few of the 29 companies that are headquarters right here in Atlanta. Home Depot, where you can build things. Delta Airlines, I think Steve talked about LA being a hub really for the West, and Delta and Atlanta is a hub. Everything good must come through Atlanta. That's my slogan, and it has been, and I will stick with it. We are the World Series champions. We also host CNN, the Center for Disease Control, and I know everyone is more than aware of that, UPS, Coca-Cola, and to name a few. In terms of languages, I did add this piece since you shared that with us. See, that was a good little prompt for me. We have over 146 languages right here in Atlanta. The percentage of the population that actually speaks a language other than English at home is about 17%. The most common non-English language is Spanish, and then Swahili follows that. And what I want to mention here in terms of the 29 company headquarters here in Atlanta are among the 2020 Fortune 1000, of which companies ranked in the elite Fortune 500. In the fiscal year 2020, these 29 companies generated an aggregate revenue of $429 billion. So Atlanta, when people think of Atlanta, they usually think of just Atlanta downtown proper, but it expands larger than that. It encompasses 29 counties, over 6 million people in the last census for 2021. And in terms of Hollywood, we are Atlantawood. Like I said, we are the largest grossing production state for films. People are coming here. There are incentives, tax incentives to do business in Atlanta. And so why would you consider somewhere else unless it's closer? But again, we can get you there with the busiest, largest, most efficient airport and airlines. So I have to bring up Emory University for a few different reasons. One, because it's my alma mater. Two, also they invented the COVID vaccine, one of the ones that have been widely used in the United States. It has been proven to be tested, highly effective. My background is nursing and clinical research, so I also work with clinical trials, and healthcare and IT go hand in hand. So WellStar is one of the systems that I wanted to bring up where I work. Over 11 health hospitals in the healthcare system, over 300 medical practices, and then Emory has a pretty expansive reach as well. And you say, well, why is that important? Because you want to also know that excellent healthcare, global healthcare, world-class healthcare is available right here in Atlanta, Georgia, where not only we are, but the Center for Disease Control is here as well. So again, this is just a beautiful map of first the city on the left. This is downtown Atlanta, and it's a true representation. And then as you can see, we're made up of 29 counties to include metropolitan Atlanta. And I remember when many years back when it wasn't so large, it just keeps expanding. And I think it goes along not just with the growth and development, and also what the future looks like in Atlanta, right? So Atlanta has seen the job market increase by 2.9% over the last year. Future job growth over the next 10 years predicted to be 46.8%. Somebody repeat that number with me, 46.8%. That's huge, which is higher than the US average of 33.5%. So the sales tax rate for Atlanta is 8.8, and in Cobb, I think it's 6. And so it kind of varies also depending on which county you're in, but the US average is 7.3. So you have the question and you may be wondering, well, Dana, what are the 4 thriving industries, the top 4 thriving industries in Atlanta? Well, I'm glad you asked, because what I will tell you is that fintech, number 1, financial technology. Everybody is using these devices to generate, for transactions. Fintech, number 1, logistics and supply chain, healthcare, information technology, advanced manufacturing. So it is all right here. And healthcare projected growth in Georgia. Georgia's healthcare market is estimated to be worth more than $4 billion in 2021. The total healthcare market last 5-year estimated annual growth rate was 8%. And I will tell you that the busiest emergency department in the actually the fifth busiest emergency department in the United States. It's right here in Atlanta at Wellstar. New business. This is what we are primed for. This is where we are positioned for. So if you look at our gross domestic product, our GDP in Georgia was worth $15.89 million in 2020, according to the official data from the World Bank. And then the GDP value of Georgia represents 0.01% of the world. GDP in Georgia is expected to reach $15.2 billion by the end of 2021. So we're on target for that. And this is according to trading economic global market models, analysts, expectations. But in the long term, the Georgia GDP is projected to trend about 16.8 billion in 2022. And these are based on econometric models. So 29 companies, as I mentioned, are headquartered right here in Atlanta that are amongst the 2020 Fortune 1000, of which 16 companies ranked in the elite Fortune 500. And in fiscal year, these 29 companies generated an aggregate revenues of 429 billion. Atlanta Fortune 500 companies, we're looking at academic systems and how they are improving. So with the Fortune 500, over 75% of the Fortune 1000 companies have a presence in the Atlanta area. And the region hosts offices of about 1,250 multinational corporations. And I put this organization up here called SORA, and this is a school expanding in its online presence. They are adjusting and pivoting along with the needs that COVID has developed, but they were actually present doing this prior to that, and they have an 18 million infusion to continue providing these services. Yes, we have entrepreneurs. Yes, we are academic focused. Yes, we are also mindful that our reach in terms of embassies, we have over 26 diplomatic missions right here in Atlanta. I only put up a few, and if you want to know how I chose, I'm really color oriented, and I knew I had to include Japan in there for Doug, so I started with Japan first. But we have over 29 diplomatic missions here in Georgia, and the 7th highest concentration of diplomatic missions in the United States. So we are well represented worldwide right here in Hotlanta. That's what we're known for. And when it comes to doing business in Atlanta, being most hospitable and kind and gracious is what you'll find from your host. It's something that you will also want to reciprocate, and you'll want to be able to sit down for at least a wonderful glass of iced tea at some point, and it will be sweet. So prepare yourself, but it's a reflection of the people that you will encounter while you're here.
Very, very good. Appreciate that. And it's great to see you again. And really appreciate the points that you made around the business opportunities and the hospitality, because it's a great transition to Thailand. Yes. And so James Herendeen is our final speaker. And just to make sure that everybody kind of knows, over the next 20 minutes, we're going to hear from James. We're going to do some questions, and I'm going to go back to each one of the speakers today and get some final comments, including potential rebuttals or whatever you think is appropriate, in terms of what you've heard from the other speakers. And so, James, thank you for joining us from Bangkok today. You have the Herendeen Group, and one of the things that's really impressed me about your career is that you have had a long career in marketing and advertising, and you've gone to Thailand, you've immersed yourself in the business there, and it's a very unique country. And so we're really looking forward to kind of a different perspective and hearing that from you today. Congratulations on your career. Thanks for being Global Advisor with Global Chamber. What would you like to share today about the opportunities and what we should know about Bangkok?
Thanks, Doug. Really thank me for getting up at 5 in the morning in order to do this.
You're amazing. Thank you so much.
No, I wouldn't say that. Well, anyway, thank you for the invitation. And I won't talk just about Bangkok, because it's, Bangkok is a big city. So we have the usual profile of finance and industry and outlying manufacturing facilities and that sort of thing. But I'd rather address the Bangkok story as a Thailand story a little bit, because it's such a diverse place. Not only is it diverse in its own industrial and economic offering, but it is a leader in Southeast Asia from a finance point of view and from a services point of view. And we extend influence into the Southeast Asia region and are deeply involved with the China economy as well. So it's a real kingpin sort of environment. Some background on Thailand. There are about 70 million people here with a GDP of $510 billion. So on a per capita basis, that's about $7,400. But that's kind of interesting when you consider that much of the country is agriculture, and the individual incomes up country are half that, perhaps. So in any case, the GDP by sector breaks down accordingly. Agriculture accounts for about 8.5%. Industry, which I'll get into in a minute, about 39%, and services 52% of total GDP. And services here are tourism, banking, and finance. The industry breakdown, we're very big in the automotive sector, we're the largest producer of automobiles and automobile parts and accessories in the region. Financial services account for 9%, electrical appliances and services 8%, and tourism is only 6%. A lot of people think Thailand is a tourist-driven business, but in fact, it accounts for about 6%. People ask the question, well, how easy is it to do business in Thailand? Can I run my business for Southeast Asia out of Thailand? And actually, it's extremely easy. Access to government services, tax and financial services, all very, very open. But an interesting thing about not only Thailand's economy, but the region in general is what we call shadow economy. And shadow economy is the practice of doing business below the radar, so to speak, to avoid paying taxes, avoiding payment to Social Security systems, to avoid various standards and compliance systems, and to conceal, well, to put it bluntly, money laundering services, and so and under the table loan sharking. This all accounts for about 40% of the total Thai economy. So when you do business here, you have to be part mafia, and at least have some very good friends in the friends of the family in the region. In that sense, we need partners when we do business in Thailand, and also I would say in the rest of Southeast Asia, Cambodia and Vietnam as well. We do a lot in Cambodia. Our company does a lot of business in Cambodia and Vietnam. Laos is an emerging market, still pretty much untapped, but Thailand and Bangkok is the hub for a lot of people here. Just a couple of things to make us feel good. The regional growth is projected to come in at over 6% this year. Next year, we're looking at growth around 5%, a little bit more than 5%. And Thailand's growth will approximate the rest of the region. So Thailand is good, Bangkok is good as a business investment, and it's a great place to have your regional headquarters centered. There you go. Over to you.
But why would that be if 40% of the business is kind of under the table? That seems like it would be a dangerous place, certainly for a multinational to be located. How does that jive?
The The multinationals play it all straight up, of course, and the multinationals who are here are, they're doing business in Thailand, but it's the regional hub for most of the large corporations. But if you look at total numbers of companies, 90%, 99% of companies in Thailand are small SMEs.
Yeah.
They don't account for the bulk of the revenue stream, but they account for the bulk of employment, for example.
Got it. Okay, so being aware of that and certainly having partners that know the landscape, I mean, that's an issue that you alone in this group of 5 cities have talked about, but I know that's got to be also important in other countries as well, China and Russia as well. I'm wondering, Leo and Todd, could you kind of relate to those issues for your countries as well? And what would your advice be relative to partnering with local people on the ground for anybody that's investing locally? And Todd or Leo, would you like to address that? You'll have to unmute, however.
Leo, did you want to say anything?
I'm thinking maybe you should go first. Let me think about this a little more. I can't tell you right. Yeah, let me analyze this.
I think it's very similar for China. There's a lot of things I think that just happen in Asia that are part of the culture, and it's their the social habits that sometimes we have a hard time grasping within our own cultural ideals and the way we do things. And so it's hard to understand. And so then we'll put a negative twist on it. I was just talking with somebody yesterday about going into China, and they're interested in going in through e-commerce because they feel like it's easier. And they have a good name over here. They have a good business. They have an international global name already established. And I just feel like going in through e-commerce isn't the best way to do it, but you need to do something with a partner. You need to have a joint venture. You need to have somebody on the ground in the country that you can trust. Trust is the challenge because we trust differently than Asians. And so when we use our way of trusting somebody and we go into Asia, then usually it's very easy to be taken advantage of because we're too trusting. So I think there's a lot of similarities going on there.
Yeah, and I would like to add also, and I think you make some good points, Todd, but if I can add to that, I think it's very similar culture-wise in terms of trust and openness, I would say. It's virtually impossible to do business in Russia unless you know someone somewhere in some circles. Going cold, the only way to do that would be to attend trade shows, some exhibitions where you can actually meet people face to face for the first time. Other than that, without a trade show, if you want to open up an e-commerce site, regardless of what it is, or have a brick and mortar store, it's going to be impossible to do without any local support. So,
got it. That makes a lot of sense. One of the questions in the chat area is about China's Belt and Road Initiative, and I'm wondering, I think I would imagine Harbin must be involved in that. Todd, if you could comment on that. I presume Moscow certainly is available to be connected in that. What opportunities are you two seeing? And maybe James, there's certainly a connection to Thailand as well. I know the train coming down, I believe all the way down to Singapore, right? Doesn't it run all the way through, or am I thinking of Malaysia? Tell us a little bit more, each of the three of you, around the Belt and Road.
It does connect down all the way down through Singapore. It will.
Okay.
There may be, I don't know where the dotted line is, but it may have something to do with water.
Okay, got it. So it's definitely involving Thailand, Russia, and China. Todd and Leo, would you like to comment on that? Is that opening up? Is it obvious, new opportunities, or is it just something that's in the background, just another piece of the noise of the economic development in the region?
no, I think the opportunities are tremendous now, more than ever, because you have the population that is hungry for new things, and it's ongoing. It never stops, that desire to get the latest and the greatest. And like I said before, and I'll say it again, anything with technology is an opportunity to enter and get immediate success. Clothing is very popular. Some well-known brands, like for example Under Armour, which is kind of fading away in US, but it's very, very hot in Russia. And Under Armour doesn't have any physical stores or any attraction in the marketplace. And I was actually just recently talking to some people at Under Armour who are interested in getting into Russia, but there are some logistical issues. There's some expenses that need to be incurred, and that's a question, of course, for the company whether or not they want to do this. But as everybody knows, you have to invest in order to gain anything.
That makes sense. For both Atlanta, Dana, and also Jeff for LA, the issues of having a partner are kind of mute, right? That's really not necessary. But both cities are leaders in respective areas. And certainly California is a leader, has been in sustainability. And with the administration and the way the world is turning, that's got to set up LA as a hub for not just the things you talked about, Jeff, but also sustainability as well. Is that the case? And I'm wondering, Dana, on your side, are there certain things that we should be aware of that are happening in Georgia? Dana or Jeff, would you like to go first?
Your choice, Dana.
Oh, okay. Well, in terms of the things that are happening in Georgia, like I said, we are certainly exceeding our goals for growth, but also bearing in mind that we have two port cities in the state, both Savannah and Brunswick. So that even lends itself for being a great hub for international import and exports, and then doing business within the Atlanta metropolitan area. What was the other part of your question? I want to be sure I address that.
Well, let me make sure that I understand that, because I think of Atlanta as an inland place. And when you say that there's a port, which port are you talking about?
I'm talking on the coastal side. So we have Savannah and Brunswick, which are about 4.5 hour drive from the metropolitan Atlanta area. However, when doing business, that's something to keep in mind because we have access to two ports.
I got you. Yeah, when you think about it, Jeff, downtown LA to the port of LA, some days is 4.5 hours. But usually it's a little bit quicker than that. Would you like to make any comments, please?
Yeah, sure. And just to comment on the other questions that were being asked, is, as somebody who assists many businesses in setting up shop in the United States, typically more often in Southern California, but not necessarily. You do want to have, and I like to think what we offer is, sort of the one-stop shopping, because it's everything. If you're going to open up shop here, you need to recognize, like people in the United States need to recognize in other countries, they're big places, lots of different cultural differences, lots of little sub-regional differences. And if you're going to open up things, you need to sit here and not only do it smartly, do it safely. You want to do it so that you don't jeopardize, what you've built in your other country. And it does help to have a partner, just to help make sure that you're doing things smartly, correctly. And one-stop shop is legal, accounting. It may be for real estate for purposes of your office space, all of those type of things in planning. And when it works to the reverse, because I assist a lot of companies in doing business elsewhere, you want to be, what I do, I'm a California lawyer, but I have very close, long time, some 20 plus years working relationships with people in, about 35 different countries. And if you have trusted people who are partners who are local people, meaning they have good government contacts, they know the issues of where you may want to be, including those issues of, big countries, not just assuming that everything's the same in the country, regardless of the, region of the country, because that's one of those, China is gigantic. And so, as an example, I have a China practice. I'm part of a group that is set up to help focus on enabling business in and out of China for the Belt and Roads program. And by the way, a shout out to the Bay Atlantic University MBA students. It's good to have you guys here. And so as part of that, as my own just orientation, because I work with local people in China, because to how I facilitate somebody doing business. So I work with a corporate advisory group, but I've had my own very superficial, I'm not pretend to be a Chinese lawyer, but I've had basic training over a period of time on tax and corporate China issues, but from a cultural perspective. And the reason why I mention that, it's enough to give you some sensitivity and awareness of things, but you need somebody who lives and breathes those issues, who can help get you the right intelligence and help you be smart. And that's the type of things that I work with on a regular basis to help. But you need to know that, including how to avoid, we sort of touched on briefly, some of the rule of law issues that can be anywhere. So, just different degrees, frankly. So from my view, all of the things we've been talking about in all the cities, Los Angeles is an easy place. So we had in 2018, we hit 50 million visitors. So come and be one of the visitors and set up home, operations. But with all seriousness, if you want to do business globally, you just need to have trusted people to work with, people who are aware of the added dimensions and nuances of where you may be. And if they don't personally have the intimacy of knowing, because no one's going to know all these things, who they can trust and work with to help you with that. And it's governmental, it's non-governmental, it's cultural, it's knowing your markets. And for example, going to Germany and just assuming that one thing will sell to all of Germany versus Atlanta is the South, California is the West, they're very different. Atlanta, Los Angeles are more in common because they're big cities, but when it comes to California and Georgia, there's parts that are similar, parts that are completely radically different, and you have to be aware of that. And when it comes to the big world, it's even more a little difficult because not everyone's as familiar. It's easy for Data and I because we're local US folks, but but the same applies everywhere. So you just need to have that awareness and openness and have your eyes open and make sure you're doing things smartly. And you don't want to sit here and risk your expansion unwisely when it comes to, if you're first exporting or importing, or if you're setting up a foreign office, you want to do it in a smart way, in a way that doesn't jeopardize what you've already built and have. And that's sort of my parting thoughts.
I really appreciate that. And the key part of one of the key parts that I take away from that is you have to be connected anywhere, even in LA, that it's relatively easy to do business. Although it's a huge city, and it's so huge that you really need somebody that knows the landscape, and Jeff is that guy for LA. James, I'm wondering, do you have some final comments? Just a short, minute wrap up of what should we take away regarding Bangkok and Thailand?
Well, not just Bangkok and Thailand, but building on the last comments, this issue of having partners and people who are in the know at the local market. In the Asian markets, in the Southeast Asian markets, a lot of businesses family run, deeply family run, and influential groups of people who are often family connected. And so it isn't just a matter of running the business by the numbers and being smart. You got to have people on the inside, in the know, who have contacts, and you've got to build networks. And it's very nuanced, and it ain't run by the numbers. It's run by face-to-face personal relationships. And if you can't build personal relationships, it's not going to happen.
Great points. Leo, how does that jive with doing business in Moscow and Russia?
I think that it's, like I said before, it's a necessity to have people that or someone that knows those people who could definitely help you, because it's just impossible if you're especially if you're a company or an individual that's never been to a market like Russia or Moscow. Especially Moscow, it's taxing just to come in and spend a week there. You age by 20 years. It's just very, very, there's so much energy everywhere. And it's exhausting to say the least. But again, opportunities are there. It's very easy to form relationships. You just have to make an effort. And I think I highly recommend, if there are local trade shows or exhibitions or conferences, this is the chance where you can get acquainted with very important people.
One quick question. I know we had a recent conversation. I think it was actually in the previous session like this, where Daniel Zaretsky, our global advisor in Uzbekistan, said, if you're going to come to Uzbekistan, tell them you don't drink vodka. That's much safer for your own health. What would your recommendation be for Moscow? Is that the right approach?
You know, I think it's overblown. Look, the people love to live their lives there. They're not the biggest difference between people here and there, or there and here in the US, is we are more focused on long-term, healthcare, savings, whatever it may be, in terms of, you want to retire and things like that. In Russia, it doesn't exist. There is no retirement. People live their lives, every day is like it's like their last, basically. And that's why, I guess emphasis on alcohol comes about, but I think it's a very misleading fact. Yes, I mean, Russians are well known for that, but at the same time, it's just part of life. They don't drink to oblivion. I mean, it's just having a glass of wine, basically, for them. So, but I again, the most important thing is logistics in Russia. You have to have at least prepare and plan ahead. You can't just show up and think that you're going to get somewhere within the territory. It's very, very difficult to navigate. So I would say just do a lot of planning.
Great thoughts. Todd, Cornell in Harbin, it hasn't happened to me, but in other parts of China, the drinking games certainly are something that are kind of part of business historically. Wonder if you could give us, not necessarily on that topic, but just a minute of kind of final comments that you'd like to make based on what you've heard from the others, and also anything else you'd like to say about China and doing business there.
Sure. I guess for me, from my own experience, doing business in China it's better done if you're doing it in Chinese. That's all I can say. You're going to get a lot better outcome. You're going to be able to use the mindset of the Chinese. With the mindset of the Chinese is going to bring you a lot more success than the mindset of the American or the German or whatever you have. With the mindset of the Chinese are good business people, but they're also, when we can work together with China, with the Chinese, and we can befriend them, and even if we don't like them, we can still befriend them. And when we can do that, I think that's when things get a lot easier. It's when we put up challenges and we put up difficulties, expectations are higher, that we can't lower our expectations and give a little bit, because when we give an inch, they'll give us a mile. That's just basically the way their culture is. And I'm sure that Leo would agree and James would agree for those countries too, because I think that's just an aspect of that part of the world. When you give an inch, people will give you a mile. And so it's that, like today, I know that I heard on the news that President Xi said, hello, my old friend, to Biden, and it was very hard for the people in the news to understand, why would he say that? That's like there's some sort of a secret message going on there or something, but no, it's not. It's just it's a very honest and sincere representation. But I also heard that Biden refused to say the same thing back to him. That's not good. When we approach other cultures and other countries from the attitude that, no, I'm not gonna fit in with your way because I think you're playing a game with me. And that actually is creating challenges that I think are unnecessary. I have five sayings from the Chinese culture that I learned throughout the years in China that I find that were really helpful with me. And one of them is, coming out of The Art of War, Sun Tzu Binfa says, 知己知彼, know yourself and know others. And I think that's so important, that we really recognize, as Americans, we barely understand ourselves, much less somebody else. And when we're going and we're interacting with other cultures, especially China, and I think probably Russia too, there's some very big differences there. and Thailand. I mean, there's a lot of differences in the cultures in the world today. The more that we can put forth to learn about them rather than expecting them to always learn about us, because when we don't learn about them, we're putting ourselves into a very, very dangerous perspective of we are being, the concept is hard to express in English, but in Chinese, it's like we're becoming acted on. We're not the ones who actually are in control. We're actually being controlled. When we learn about other cultures, when we speak their languages, when we understand who they are, we're in control. And so it's a really important skill set to hold. And it's something that I really hope that the students that are listening to this call can understand. Learn a foreign language, and don't just learn it for 2 years like the average person here who's learning a foreign language, like, oh, I took French or Spanish for 2 years. Oh, you must be really good. No, that's not true. I'm still learning Chinese after 20 years, after actually 40, after living in China for 20 years. But it's something that should be ongoing because that's a strength. And so when we can interact with these cultures from their perspective, that puts us in the driving seat.
I think Todd has made a brilliant point. I can't underscore it better. Beautifully said. Well said.
Thank you.
And I totally agree. I will, however, defend President Biden because I think he gets it, but he also has politics. And so if he would say something back like that, he would be crucified by his political rivals. And so we always have to think about when people say something publicly, what are the different factors associated with it? But Joe Biden from Scranton, Pennsylvania, and Claymont, Delaware, believe me, I think he gets, what was being said, and probably certainly behind the door is doing hopefully some good things. Just the fact that they met the other day, I think, is a great step forward. So let's,
as long as he said something positive, like, yeah, it's good to see you too, not just ignoring it, but responding in a way that's carrying it forward, but not actually meeting it at its same meaning.
Mhm.
I hear you. I don't agree on the particular case, but the overall, I think we all can agree, right, is that we have to understand who we're working with. And so your points are very well taken and totally agree with those. Let's go then to Dana in the final comments. And I'm sorry that we went a little bit over. That's my own fault, but I think it was well worth to hear from everybody. And hearing from Dana as our last speaker, I wonder if you could give us any final comments regarding Atlanta or anything else you'd like to share.
Absolutely, Doug. Thank you again. It's a saying and may even be coined as a cliche, but people do business with people they know, they like, and they trust. So building a relationship, which has been the one thread that we've all agreed upon tonight, building a relationship, making a connection, coming out of our comfort zones, learning a new language, and taking the time to understand culture and to embrace it is the foundation of building trust, and then therefore an opportunity to build business relationships.
A great way to end it. I think it's something that we all definitely agree that understanding the other person, no matter where you're doing business, is critically important.
Mhm.
There's different shades and differences between different cultures, and it makes it more or less difficult to do that. When any American goes to Atlanta or LA, the cultural understanding is pretty close to being okay. But when you go to Thailand or to Moscow or to Harbin, things are going to be trickier no matter what other country you're from, because there's differences, and it takes listening and understanding and respect.
Mm-hmm.
Seems like sometimes that the world has taken a step backward regarding that, but I'm an optimist, and I feel like we kind of go through different cycles, and I'm hoping that the next cycle is more of listening and understanding and respectfulness, to bring the world together. And all of us have the power to do that, right? In our business and our activities. We can't be guided by what happens on the news or what, the news media says. We can, however, be guided by our heart and our understanding of what it takes to grow business. And what takes growing business is that understanding and listening and respecting the other person. So yes. I think certainly, Dana, you do that with your cup of tea activities at Global Chamber on a regular basis. Did you have something else that you wanted to add to that?
Well, I had one prime example that actually occurred this week. And I mentioned about, doing business with people you know, like, and trust. And so one of the gentlemen that I was working with this week which is rare. Anyway, he's from one of the countries in Africa. And when he learned that not only I had been to the continent, but to more countries in his own continent that he had, there was a level of respect that was given, that he goes, wow. So now he's interested in building more of a rapport, possibly doing some other things together, just because I shared with him that it's my interest to embrace cultures, it's my interest to embrace countries and people mostly. I think that's the greatest assets that we have is people, our people.
If I could just add one or two
Yeah,
quick
Jeff.
little things, Doug. Sure. So one thing I find, I think somewhat universal wherever you may be traveling and doing business, culturally, if you show interest in the local people, they get it. They appreciate the fact that you maybe are researching, that you're interested. That's what hopes, will open doors for you. And if you make a cultural gaffe, just own up to it right away and apologize. And people really respect that too. It's this elitism where you don't show interest in other people's culture. You don't recognize when maybe, whoops, you did something completely unintentional. That is that unwary, trap for people. And we could have a whole nother program probably on strategies of, it's not just, Ukraine, Russia, Poland, and China. It could be, there's a lot of places of people who do business over alcohol. And what do you do if you're a teetotaler? Your, religion doesn't allow you, or you're a recovering alcoholic. And the traps that some people will have where, it may not be business, it may just be cultural, where, you're supposed to like have a drink with everybody you meet. And it's like physically, a little taxing for somebody who, isn't used to that, let alone even if you're used to it. Probably a lot of doors or the strategies of getting people to, drink too much to make a mistake in the negotiating table. There's a lot of little interesting things. So that's gonna be a whole nother program, but cultural sensitivity, and I think, doing some homework and being wide-eyed open and, showing people interest is almost always the winning message and way to, endear yourself to people who you don't otherwise know well.
Absolutely. Does anybody have anything else in closing? I just wanted to make sure we are a little bit over, but I wanted to give everybody a last shot. Is there anything else that anybody has to say?
Oh, you did ask me about sustainability. You asked me about sustainability in Los Angeles. I didn't touch on that, but we are the #1 solar city, and we have huge green projects going on to make the city completely green and independent energy city. So there's a lot of technology and stuff going on, but I didn't touch on that. But Doug, you sort of asked about it, I never answered. So I just wanted to close that little.
Oh, I appreciate that. And the leadership that California overall has had in air pollution, for instance, has kind of resurrected itself with the new administration. So as the world addresses climate change, California seems to be very well positioned to be able to capture a lot of the global opportunity. And certainly hence the question. And anything else from anybody else before I close it down?
Very valuable. Thank you very much, Doug.
Appreciate your comments and each one of you. Todd, is there anything else that you wanted to say in closing?
No, not really. I just glad to be here and glad to have the opportunity to share and create bridges.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Thanks all of you. All of you are very special in your ability to understand not just those markets, but more broadly. So Dana, Jeff, Leo, James, and Todd, thank you all for your conversation today. And this will be, a foundational information for hopefully others to listen. And if you're listening to a video of this or recording of this, I guess is what I meant, feel free to reach out to any of these folks. And if you have trouble contacting them, please send an email to info@globalchamber.org, and we're happy to help. Our next conversation is actually exactly a month from now on December 16th. We have actually all 5 speakers are already set for Accra, Ghana, San Juan, Puerto Rico, Tel Aviv, Israel, Indianapolis, Indiana, USA. I think that got brought up earlier today, and Berlin, Germany. So thank you all for participating today in whatever form, and certainly to all of our speakers. You're all phenomenal.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Doug. Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Doug.
This
Have a great
this was
day.
absolutely terrific and appreciate everybody's contribution. Thank you.
Be well.
Bye.
Take care, everybody.
And we're finished.